Today we're going to be working on the floor, starting face up, laying on your back, knees bent, feet on the floor. Remember the outer edges of the feet parallel, toes maybe in, heels out a little bit, knees in line with the hips. We're simply going to press the feet, inhale, lift the hips up into a bridge. Exhale, lower down one vertebrae at a time. Tailbone last. Inhale, press through the feet, lift the hips, arch your back. Feel the stretch on the front of the hips. Exhale, vertebrae by vertebrae, roll your back, especially the lower back here. We're tucking the tailbone, we're trying to squeeze through the hip flexors on the front of the hip. Low back, sacrum, tailbone down. Again, inhale, press your feet, engage your glutes, engage your low back, and tuck your chin into the chest. Try to lift your upper back, easy on the neck here. Maybe you don't go as high. Make sure there's no pain there. Exhale, roll your spine down to the floor. Once you're on the floor, we're going to try now just simply tilting and tucking the tailbone, nutating the hips, meaning we're going to send our tailbone back to point the back of the head, and then we're going to tuck and try to point the tailbone towards the knees. So the tailbone goes back on the inhales, feel the arch on the low back, feel the muscles of the low back engaging. Exhale, release the low back muscles, press the low back vertebrae to the ground, lift your tailbone and your sacrum, engage your abdominals, engage your hip flexors. Inhale, relax the front stretches, back tightens. Exhale, release the back stretches, and the front tightens. Tilting on the inhale to arch, tucking on the exhale to round. 2 more times. Let's try a different exercise on the floor, same position. Let's take hands to the hips. Feel your hips. Obviously right now we are simply laying so the hips are even. Let's try lifting the left hip towards the left armpit, contracting the side left waistband muscles, and then release that and stretch it as you contract the opposite side. Feel the space between your rib and your hip bone lengthen, and then shorten, contract. And in a sense, you can think of it as if you were a dog wagging your tail. Your tailbone now pointing to the left, goes through center, and as we close the right side, the tailbone points to the right. Tailbone to the left, close the left, feel the left abdominal muscles contracting, QL, hip flexors, transverse, obliques, and then release onto the other side. One more time. Come back to center. Check your feet again, toes slightly in, heel slightly out. Press the feet, come onto a bridge pose like we did before, chin in, shoulders away from the ears. And let's try a few tucking and tilting of the tailbone here. So arching if it feels good, otherwise skip it. exhale, rounding. So we're doing the same movement we were doing on the floor, but now we're doing it with the hips off the floor. I'm arching my low back, and then I round my low back and I engage my hip flexors. Release the hip flexors, engage the back, release the back, engage the hip flexors. One more time. And exhale, roll yourself down back to neutral. And again, press through the feet, lift the hips. This time we're gonna lift one hip up and then the other. So left hip towards the left armpit, contract that left side, and then right hip to the right, contract the right side. Just a couple times on each side, maybe one more. Feeling that sense of wagging your tail, left to right and back to center. Roll it down. From here, think about your low back on the floor. Squeeze those vertebrae down, meaning we're contracting the front, not the back. We're not arching, we're rounding, we're pressing the spine, the belly button down. Bring the knees and feet together. Flex your ankle as if you were trying to point your toes towards your knees, and barely floating the right heel off the ground. You're gonna straighten the right leg all the way out, right knee straight. Squeeze your right quad, and slowly floating it back. And we're gonna alternate the left leg barely off the ground, hovering over the floor. The heel goes all the way. Straight knee, squeeze the left glute, bring it back slowly. And we'll just alternate, moving as slow as possible. Most important thing is no pain on the low back, no pain on the hip, no pain on the knees, tension on the front of the body. One more time on each side. And when you come back to neutral, just relax here for a moment. And let's roll on to our bellies, face down. We're gonna sit up with the feet and the legs together, forehead on the ground, toes together, heels apart, flex the ankle, and float the toes off the ground. Not super high with the knees fully bent, but keeping the legs fairly straight, minimal flexion on the knees, toes off the floor. Keeping the back of the neck long, lift the head straight up. And breathe here. Feel the back body activate. Squeeze the knees, squeeze the toes, flex the ankles, lift the chest, tuck the chin in. Big breath. Shoulders away from the ears. Keep lifting your nose away from the ground, keeping the back of the neck long. Big breaths here. If you haven't yet, you can lift your hands and elbows off the ground. Keep checking with your breath. One more big breath here. Exhale, hands on the floor, underneath your shoulders, toes on the ground. Press yourself to a tabletop position. Palms underneath the shoulders, spread open, fingers wide. We'll do 3 cat-cows, full cat-cows. So inhale, lift the tailbone, arch the low back, mid back, chin up. Exhale, round. Tuck the tailbone round your low back, mid back, upper back, chin in. Two more like that. Inhale, tailbone up, arch the back, extend and stretch the front. Exhale, round the back, close the front. One more time. Inhale to open the front. And exhale to open the back, closing the front. On the next inhale, we'll just come back to a neutral tabletop, so the spine is long. And now we're gonna keep it only on the hips. So we're only going to inhale, arch the low back. Nothing else is moving, just the low back arching, tailbone reaching back. Exhale, round the low back. Not the mid back or the upper back or the neck, just tucking the tailbone and feel the squeeze on your hip flexors. Inhale, arch. And exhale, round. Squeeze the front as you exhale, get all the air out, and then inhale. Engage the low back and open the hip flexors. Exhale to close. Okay, and then like we did before, we're going to try to get one hip up towards the armpit and then alternate. So I'll start with the right. I'm getting my tailbone to point to the right, squeezing the right abdominals, and then pointing to the left. Point to the right with the tailbone. You can even send the hips a little bit to the right, and then point to the left. Last couple here. And when you're ready, just come back to neutral. We're gonna take our right leg, step it forward. Here we wanna make sure that the right foot and the right knee are in the same line with the knee stacked over. And then on the back, pretty much the same thing. You can bring that knee forward if you want to. You can bring the knee back. Just make sure your left foot is straight behind the knee and not turned to the side like so. So keep it straight. You can use your arm to support yourself on your way up. And now we're gonna check our hips. So if you notice your right hip is forward, pull it back. And most importantly, we're gonna lift the right hip up, dropping the left hip, and then go all the way right hip down, lifting the left hip. Two more times like that, right hip up, right hip down. Right hip up, left one down, right down, left. And then we'll just switch. So hands on the floor, right leg back, left leg forward. Your toes can be pointing back or they can be tucked under. Either way works. Come up. Make sure again your foot is not turned to either side. And then first we're going to check if the hips are in the same line to the sides. And then we're going to see if the hips are up or down. We'll just lift the left hip up, right hip down, right up, left down. Two like that. Last one here. Okay, we're gonna switch again. Same thing. One more time on each side. I'm gonna turn so you can see this from a different angle. So I'm basically starting with my right leg forward, my heel underneath my knee, and the back leg straight behind the knee so I don't have the foot to either side. I check if one hip is forward than the other, and then I check The hip lifting and dropping 3 times. Right hip up and down, even, maybe a little bit past it. All the way up, through even, a little bit past it, squeezing the left side, squeezing the right side, stretching the left side, and we'll switch. Left leg forward, left hip up, left down, up, and just one more time. Good, and this time we'll just come back up to standing. And the last thing we'll do here is wide stance, outer feet parallel, hands on the hips, maybe palms flat, pretty much parallel to the floor. We're gonna send the right hip down, left hip up, and try to feel the stretch on the inner right thigh, on the inside of the right leg. From here, left hip down, right hip up, and stretch the inner left thigh. Notice the torso the whole time is straight as one hip tucks, and then the other, the torso remains pretty much immobile here, just breathing. And I'll show you from the side here. So let's keep going. Left hip up, I'm squeezing the left abdominals. Right hip up, I'm squeezing the right abdominals. Left hip up, stretch the inner right thigh. Right hip up, stretch the opposite inner thigh. One more time, on each side. And back to neutral. Bring your legs closer together and just standing still here for a moment, noticing. Good job.